Thank you all for joining us here at I-80 Sports, where today we are talking the fallout of the Evander Kane situation, as well as other news and notes around the NHL. Thank you all for joining us here again at I-80 Sports. Thank you all for joining us here again at I-80 Sports. Make sure that you follow us down below on our website, i80sports.com, for all of our NHL content that we've got coming up. We're hitting you live with weekly updates on news and notes throughout the regular season, and we've even got a new segment that's coming up this Friday. You don't want to miss it, especially if you live in the tri-state area. So make sure that you check us out on our website down below, and if you're here on YouTube, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe for all of the content that we've got coming up. And if you are on Twitter, make sure you follow us down below at I80_sports NHL. And if you're already following us, thank you guys so much, because without you guys, we can't do this on a weekly basis. I'm Brian. He's Tom. Tom, how are you doing today?
Doing well, and here we are. Got through the first week of the season. Some surprises, some not so surprises, but a lot of stuff here that I just look at it and I'm like, it's 2 and 3 games. It's a small sample size. You can't determine anything just yet.
Yeah, I find it absolutely hilarious right now that you have some people that are ready to hurl themselves off a cliff because, oh God, we're losing, or people who are just ready to hoist the Stanley Cup like, we're winners, let's go. Like, pump the brakes there for a little bit. Now, before we get into the news, it's time to check out that traffic report. It's time to hit up some news and notes around the NHL.
The I-80 Sports Traffic Report, where you can find all your news and notes from the week.
Like I said, we're talking the NHL news first before we get into the Evander Kane situation. So first and foremost, role reversal in the NHL so far. The Buffalo Sabres are the best team in the league. Is it time to give them the favor for the Stanley Cup here, Tom?
No, it's 2 games in. It's 2 games in. Even 20 games in. Around Christmas time, maybe. And that's not even Christmas time. That's like around Thanksgiving. Wouldn't even do it for me. If we're into late January and early February and this team's in a playoff spot, or if some crazy thing happened and they're in first place, then maybe I start believing. It's 2 games in. Come on, guys.
I don't know, man. I think I'm just looking forward to watching Rasmus Dahlin hoist his first of many Stanley Cups with the dynasty known as the Buffalo Sabres right now. I mean, come on. Hop on the bandwagon. You got to believe in the Pagulas, man. I agree with Tom here. It's a small sample size. And no matter what we're going to be talking about here, no matter what, it's a small sample size so far. We're only into the first week of the NHL season, and we've got a lot of weeks left to go. We got a lot of months left to go, let alone a lot of weeks left to go. Give it 20 more games. Let's see where they're at. You know, that being said, on the flip side of things, the Montreal Canadiens, who were in the Stanley Cup final this past year, haven't found their way to a win yet. Is it time for Montreal fans to hurl themselves off the proverbial cliff there, Tom?
Well, I don't know if they should have even been thinking about themselves being on top of a cliff. I don't understand what they thought here. You had a nice run to the finals last year. Your captain's out. Your superstar goalie's out. Last year, I mean, I know Montreal fans, I know it's hard for them to believe this, but from what I saw last year, that was a blueprint of a typical late 90s Stanley Cup final. Cinderella team with a hot goalie goes up against a juggernaut in a short series. And that's exactly what Montreal was. They were the exact blueprint of a team like, say, the 96 Florida Panthers, or a team like, say, the 98 Washington Capitals. I'd say the 99 Sabres, but they kind of gave Dallas a little bit of a series that year. And, well, I'm sorry, Buffalo fans. We're not going to go into the Brett Hull goal. We could spend all day talking about that.
Feet in the crease.
Yeah. But to tell you the truth, if you go back to our season previews, I think we both agreed that this team wasn't going to be that good. They just weren't going to be that good. And the question is just how not good are they right now? If you go on Tankathon right now and it's still way too early, They're slotted in that first spot to get Shane Wright. Now, I know it's way too early, and I know it probably won't happen, or maybe it will happen. But believe it or not, maybe, just maybe, a high lottery pick and rebuilding around a potential franchise cornerstone like that, or maybe a guy like Connor Bedard next year, is exactly what this team needs. I've said before, from the top down, this whole organization needs to be reworked. And maybe, just maybe, a terrible year this year or next year and landing a high lottery pick might just be the first step into redoing that whole organization.
It could be. But, given the fact that they're winless right now, I mean, I think it's obvious. You need to blow this team up. I mean, you got to trade Nick Suzuki. You got to trade Cole Caulfield. I mean, you got to trade the whole team. The whole team's worthless. I mean, just blow the franchise up at this point. 20-plus Stanley Cups? Nah. Move them to, I don't know, move them back to Hartford or, move them to Portland or something like that. Just delete Montreal.
Bring back the Maroons.
Yeah, exactly.
Or the Wanderers.
Yeah, that being said, it's such a small sample size. Just like we can't get overhyped about Buffalo actually being good right now, we can't get ourselves overhyped about the fact that Montreal is losing right now. We know that this team has deficiencies right now. We know that they're missing some very key pieces to this team to operate correctly. So let's wait a little bit longer before we hit that panic button on any team, really. Now, before we move on with any more news, it's time to get to the task at hand here. Why you all probably clicked on this video, it's time to pump those brakes.
Not so fast. It's time to pump the brakes.
Yeah, it's time to talk about the fall of Evander Kane here, and my, how the mighty have fallen in this case. Goodness me. So Evander Kane has been suspended 21 games for violating COVID-19 protocol. He faked a COVID-19 vaccination card. And he's lucky that he's only getting a suspension. We already knew he was suspended internally and indefinitely by the San Jose Sharks. But now he's been suspended by the entire league, 21 games, for a breach of COVID protocol. Now, that being said, we're not here to argue what the protocol should be. We're not here to argue semantics or politics or anything along those lines. None of that's going to be tolerated here, just so that way you guys know. We'll even disable comments if that is the case. But that being said, given the laundry list of issues with Evander Kane from the past 6 months, beyond just the COVID protocol, his gambling investigation from this past summer. If you're curious about that, we talked about that earlier this summer. Go and check out an earlier video so that way you can hear that whole entire situation. But the long and the short of it was he was investigated for potentially gambling on his own games and throwing his own games for the San Jose Sharks. So that being said, with Evander Kane getting hit with this 21-game suspension and being suspended indefinitely by the San Jose Sharks weeks ago, what does this mean for San Jose going forward? And can Evander Kane ever rebound from this? So, Tom, I'll open the floor to you. What do you think about this whole entire situation? What does this mean for Evander Kane and the San Jose Sharks?
I mean, for San Jose, it probably doesn't mean a whole lot of anything. They didn't plan on having him back this year. He's suspended. So I really don't think this affects the Sharks in any way at all. It's going to still be business as usual. It's just kind of a damper on their organization for what he did. But at the same time, they went through the correct protocols. He's not there anymore. For Evander Kane himself, maybe he can personally rebound from this. But I don't know about professionally rebounding, and maybe we'll talk about that a little later. And it's sad because you've seen this happen in other sports, like in the NFL and the NBA a little bit as well. But it's even happened in hockey, if you really think about it. I go back to a player back in the 70s named Brian Spencer, who was drafted by the Toronto Maple Leafs, was having himself a hell of a career for the Leafs, and pretty much thought because he was the next Toronto Maple Leaf superstar in the early 1970s that the rules didn't apply to him. He found himself on a bunch of different teams. He found himself out of hockey by the mid-70s. And by the 80s, he found himself shot dead in Florida. Well, I don't think this will happen to Evander Kane. It's sort of a story that parallels it. If you guys ever want to read up on it, look it up on Wikipedia. If you have Amazon Prime, they actually did a movie on Brian Spencer. But it kind of just shows how you can overindulge as a professional athlete and what can happen to you, and you still have to follow the rules. You can't cheat, no matter what, no matter in what respect.
Yeah, and I'm going to cut right to the quick on this one. If you're unvaccinated, just say so. We've already had a couple players that have come forward and say, I'm currently unvaccinated, and they're accepting the protocol behind it. They're accepting the fact that they're going to miss some games, especially if they have to play in Canada. They know that they're going to have to miss those games. In Evander Kane's case, he doesn't help his situation whatsoever by trying to fake a card. And as I stated before, he's lucky he's not getting charged for something like this too. I've seen instances beyond just a vaccination record, but felony charges being brought up for forging paperwork such as this, important policy paperwork such as this. This is some serious stuff. So in Evander Kane's case, yeah, personally, he might come out on the other end okay. He'll recoup from this no matter what. But professionally, I think he's tarnished himself to the point where other teams are going to distance themselves from him because he's going to be seen as a cancer. He's going to be seen as a locker room problem. He's going to be seen as a headache for a lot of teams to deal with. And it's just a laundry list of issues that he's had in the past. The gambling problems. Now the protocol issues. As for San Jose, this is a key paradigm shift anyway this season. They are not going to be one of the better teams in the NHL this season. So honestly, they're really not going to miss him this year. They're not looking to win a ton of games this year. They're looking to hit that reset button. This is only going to help them hit that reset button quicker and move on to maybe a new dynasty later on, if that's what they want to try to do. So Evander Kane's absence only helps their cause to maybe even getting the number 1 overall pick later on. Evander Kane is no slouch when it comes to when it comes to his on ice talent. Now, actually, just to bring it up for reference and pun intended, hockey reference. Thank God for hockey reference that we can just pull stats, whenever we need to. In 769 career games, he has registered 506 points, 264 of them being goals. He is a very, very, very good player. He is no slouch whatsoever. In probably his best season, 57 points in 74 games. Not bad whatsoever. He is a player that when he's focused on winning, when he's focused on actually performing, he's a player that is among one of the best in the entire league. He scores goals. He agitates. And he agitates sometimes better than a lot of other players in the league. So it's disappointing to see this fall from grace from Evander Kane. But, maybe there's some personal reflection there. And I hope that Evander Kane eventually, redeems himself from this. Even if he can't necessarily have the opportunity to do it professionally, but maybe do it on a personal level for himself. So good luck, Evander Kane. It's unfortunate. It's just really unfortunate to see no matter what. Moving on to the next bigger news story of the week. Nikita Kucherov to long-term IR. Haven't we seen this before? This seems eerily similar. And not even that. Here's what I'm a little bit mad about when it comes to Nikita Kucherov. It's an undisclosed injury, and he's going to LTIR. Why is Tampa Bay not being transparent about what the injury is? And why are they able to kind of get away with this again? Are they circumventing the salary cap? Tom, speak some sense into this one. What is going on here with the Nikita Kucherov situation for the Tampa Bay Lightning?
I mean, if he needs surgery, I don't know if they're circumventing the salary cap. At the same time, you're not required by the rules to say what the injury is. It's happened so many times with the Rangers in the playoffs because the Rangers were notorious back in last decade during the Lundqvist era for not reporting what the injuries were. It would either be upper body injury or lower body injury. They would never say what it is. So in a way, as terrible as it is, they are still playing by the rules. The real question about this is the length. Is how long he's going to be out. Is he going to miss the Olympics? Is he going to be out till, say, the trade deadline? If he is, and comes back after the deadline, And if they need somebody to fill a spot until then, do they maybe kick the tires on a Phil Kessel? Phil Kessel can't be a super. Phil Kessel, I mean, he was always good. I don't know if Phil Kessel was ever a superstar like Kucherov is. But one thing we know about Phil Kessel is this. You can slot Phil Kessel on a contending team and say a third line role, and he can thrive. We saw that with Pittsburgh in 2016 and 2017. Anybody remember the HBK line with him, Nick Bonino, and Carl Hagelin? Could Tampa try to pull the same thing and maybe put him with Ross Colton and Matthew Joseph? If I'm not mistaken, I believe that's their third line right now. I'm probably blanking on a name right now, but just say that. Say you want to have on your second line, you want Stamkos and Cirelli up there, and you want to drop Kessel down to your third line. Now that gives them more depth going in the playoffs, and that gives them a serious chance to maybe go after that third Stanley Cup. But right now, like I said, this is all just what if. This is all what if analysis. This is just if they do go after Phil Kessel, if Kucherov's out a long amount of time. But right now, yet again, hate to break it to you people. I know you don't want to hear it, but Tampa is playing by the rules.
Yeah. I mean, the unfortunate truth is, in my belief, Tampa is not. I don't honestly think that they're trying to circumvent the salary cap. I don't think that this is a situation like that. But it's so difficult not to put this headline under a microscope after what happened last year. I can't help but feel like the fact that the Tampa Bay Lightning were not in cap compliance in the playoffs last year, they were $18 million over the salary cap during the postseason, and it could very well happen again, and this is almost deja vu all over again. I feel like Gary Bettman is going to have to take a look at the rule book and just be like, is there something that we need to modify here? Especially if Tampa Bay ends up three-peating, which I don't know happens. We don't know what's going to happen in the future.
The cap never counted in the playoffs, so it never counted. Since the salary cap's been instated, it's never counted in the playoffs.
And that's true, but it's more so one of those things that, is it something that the Players Association is going to have to look at later on? Is it something that they kind of have to maybe go back and address later on and say, hey, does Tampa Bay win if they're in cap compliance from last year at least? The year before, no argument. I think they still would have won no matter what. That was a great lineup. This past year, also a great lineup, but glaringly over the cap, and they would not have been able to do that in the regular season and also compile the stats that they compiled over the regular season either. But like Tom had mentioned before, how long is he going to be out for? Until the Olympics? Until the trade deadline? Is he going to miss the Olympics? Which would also be huge for Team Russia. Nikita Kucherov is one of the most important players on this upcoming Team Russia roster this year. He's your top forward on Team Russia this year. And if I'm Alexei Zhamnov, the coach of Team Russia for the Olympics this year, I might be a little concerned, and I might be calling John Cooper, the head coach of the Tampa Bay Lightning, and say, hey, be transparent with me. What's going on with Nikita Kucherov? Do I need to plan around this for the Olympics this year? So more on this maybe sometime at a later date once we actually know for sure what's going on with Nikita Kucherov. We're probably going to be revisiting this at some point. Lastly, of the bigger headlines, so the NHL, especially the Chicago Blackhawks and New Jersey Devils, in a very classy move, honored the late Jimmy Hayes this past Friday. And it was very moving. It was a very moving ceremony. It was a very classy act by both the New Jersey Devils and the Chicago Blackhawks to honor Jimmy Hayes in that way, and the Hayes family in general. We also want to be able to express our sincerest condolences to the entire Hayes family during this time, because we know it has not been easy whatsoever. And unfortunately, it has come out that Jimmy Hayes had unfortunately passed away with fentanyl and cocaine in his system. And this has been a problem in the NHL. And in some ways, some players have felt it has fallen on deaf ears. You've had Robin Lehner, the starting goaltender for the Vegas Golden Knights, come forward and talking about malpractice and talking about mistreatment by NHL doctors and giving unknown substances to players so they can get back on the ice quicker. And the problem is, I think we're finally getting to that tipping point of when is the NHL Players Association and the NHL going to maybe do a little bit more to dig a little bit deeper into safening up and to, express their sincerest concern for their players, whether they are still playing in the NHL or if they are alumni of the NHL. So, Tom, what do you think of this fallout? Does a deeper problem need to be addressed within the NHL?
I think it finally does because unfortunately somebody finally passed away. I mean, if you look at a player, and I'm going back, but I'm sure it's somebody everybody knows. If you look at Theo Fleury, how many times he was in and out of it? He went in back in 01 and it did no good for him. He came right back out of it, stayed sober till the Olympics, and then right after he won the gold medal with Canada in 02, was right back on the wagon again. How many guys go into this thing, come back out, and they're good for about 3 seconds and then worse off than they were? This needs to be addressed from the top down again. Somebody just passed away due to drug abuse, and it really, really needs to be looked at. Robin Lehner's right, but the problem with Robin Lehner is this: the league doesn't want him speaking out what's really going on. But the problem is, you see a lot of players, wind up like Theo Fleury did. You look at a player like, not even with that either, just with, misuse of finances as well. You look at a guy, and I'm going back even further, a guy like Joe Murphy. Joe Murphy is on the streets of some town in Northern Ontario, sitting on park benches talking to himself. Trevor Kidd, who never played with Joe Murphy, never even knew Joe Murphy, had to go up there and help him out because he was so concerned. So you have Joe Murphy, who was homeless, Theo Fleury, who went into the program twice and came back out and had even worse problems than he did beforehand, and now we have somebody who passed away. So this whole thing needs to be looked at, and this whole thing needs to be reorganized. And I know there's a lot of times where I've heard Robin Lehner say things, and I'm just like, this guy's out of his mind. But this one, I 100% agree with him on.
Yeah. First and foremost, I cannot express in words alone how much my heart goes out to the Hayes family here. No family deserves to deal with this. Jimmy was only 31 years old, and his body had been through the ringer like many other players in the NHL, like most players in the NHL have. But I feel like Robin Lehner's points from a few weeks ago echo here. When will the NHL and the NHLPA step up and deal with this problem and say our players need help? It has been known for a while that there is a serious drug problem in the NHL because of the pressures teams put on their players to perform on a nightly basis. You've had players in the past that have had suspensions because of cocaine use. Evgeny Kuznetsov is one player that comes to mind in terms of that. But it should not have to take the death of a young man or woman to finally address a problem. The first step to recovery is accepting that you have a problem. When will the NHL make their first step and accept that they have a problem? I really hope they do sometime soon. And my heart goes out to any of those who are struggling and who are addicted. And just short little PSA, if you are one of those people that does, suffer from an addiction or suffer from a lingering problem such as this, reach out, get help. It'll save your life. Moving right along. We're going back to some NHL news that we missed beforehand, before we got into our nitty gritty of the week. A couple things that we need to point out here from before. So the Chicago Blackhawks, what the hell is going on with them? They are playing some of the sloppiest brand of hockey thus far. Tom, what do you think of the Chicago Blackhawks so far? Are you concerned?
Yeah, a little bit. You brought in Seth Jones to be your young power play quarterback. You brought in Marc-Andre Fleury to be your number one legit starting goalie. But how many times have I said this about the Blackhawks? And I hate to say it. It reminds me of kind of the Rangers in the dark ages. After the Rangers, lost Mark Messier in 97, they kept trying to repeat 94 by bringing guys in, by drafting the wrong guys. They kept trying to repeat what they had over and over and over again. And how many times have I said it about Chicago? And I hate to sound like a broken record. I just think Chicago is too little too late to this party. It is. They had, a decent game against the Devils. But then they went into Pittsburgh Saturday night, who doesn't have Crosby and who doesn't have Malkin, and got whacked. I mean, like I said before, we are still way too early in this season to start putting predictions or projections or final saves on anybody. It's only been 3 games, but it hasn't looked good. So in another few weeks, let's see what they're doing. Maybe they're still working some kinks out. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, Chicago looked miserable against the New Jersey Devils. I watched that game in full on Friday because, I mean, of course I did. The defense was making some bad outlet passes, suicide passes galore. Could not find the right outlets to their forwards. The forecheck was also lazy on the offense's case. And the offense overall, it felt unmotivated for most of the game, minus the third period, where the New Jersey Devils tried their hardest to give Chicago back this game. Like, they tried their hardest to give that game back to them. But in the end, Chicago ended up losing that game in overtime thanks to a beautiful overtime goal by Jack Hughes, I might add. But even still, despite the sloppiness by the defense, despite the sloppy play overall by the Chicago team, it's a breath of fresh air to watch Jonathan Toews again. I am so glad to see him back. And the NHL is so much better to actually have Jonathan Toews back. It's so good to actually see him performing again. Hopefully his season starts to pick up soon. The last bit of news before we get into our quick hits, the Vegas Golden Knights have lost Max Pacioretty and Mark Stone to injuries, at least in the short term, because currently Max Pacioretty is I don't want to misquote this one. Pacioretty is week to week, whereas Mark Stone is day to day. So it is in the short term from what it seems like, so long as there isn't a setback. So the question becomes, what does this mean for the Vegas Golden Knights, potentially in the short term? And if there is a setback, what does it mean in the long term if it's worst case scenario? Tom, what do you think?
Well, in the short term, it's a little bit of an inconvenience. Yes, you're down 2 of your best players. But I look at it the same thing, and I'm like, well, you're playing in one of the weakest divisions in the league, if not the weakest division in the league. So if it's a short-term thing, yeah, it might be a minor inconvenience now. But once they get everybody back, I think they'll be fine. But if it's a long-term thing with both of them, that's where it starts getting a little sketchy. Right now you have the Edmonton Oilers who, despite all the problems they've had over the past year, they're still a very good regular season team. Right now they have the best hockey player in the world playing for them in Connor McDavid. If the Knights are shorthanded 2 of their best players, could it allow Edmonton to, climb that division, and maybe Edmonton winds up winning that division this year if they're shorthanded for a long period of time? Depends. Really depends on what happens here, because we don't know. But it really depends, because right now what I'm seeing out of Edmonton is that Connor McDavid is on another planet right now. I mean, he's always been on another planet. But Connor McDavid has been shot out of a cannon to start this year. And if Vegas is down, Edmonton will probably jump on that.
More on Connor McDavid soon. But it's a little bit rough for Vegas in the early going, especially losing your top 2 forwards, especially your captain as well. It means that the second line is going to have to step up a little bit. That's Riley Smith, William Karlsson, and Jonathan Marchessault. And they need to step up in a big way so that way Vegas doesn't miss Pacioretty and Stone as much. And I know that the trio, that three-headed monster can absolutely step up when needed. They have stepped up in the postseason before. They have stepped up in the regular season. They are the original guard of the Vegas Golden Knights, and they'll turn to them just like they did when they first started as a franchise, and it'll be no different in that regard. But it also means that the Vegas Golden Knights are going to need to rely on some other players to put up the points in the meanwhile. Pacioretty and Stone have categorically been the better goal scorers on this team for the past year now. But it also might be that opportunity, if they decide to go this route, to maybe see what they have in Peyton Krebs. And that's a player that I'm kind of monitoring, and I want to see if he's going to finally break into the limelight and actually kind of make a name for himself. He's a player that was drafted 2 years ago at this point, or 3 years ago, I think, at this point. And I'm waiting to see what he can finally do in the NHL. This is a player that's been highly touted for a while now, and I just want to see him get his crack at the NHL. He played AHL minutes last year, did relatively well as well, and maybe it's time to finally see what you got in the kid, especially with, 2 of your best players out. Luckily, it doesn't seem like it's a death sentence. I mean, Stone's out day to day. Pacioretty's out week to week, like I mentioned before. So we'll just monitor tonight's performance over to spam. We'll see if our words come back to bite us in this regard. All right, time to get some quick hits before we move on to our penultimate segment of the night. So some quick hits here, just some quick news stories that didn't really, garner a lot of attention here. We got some contract signs to talk about. Charlie McAvoy re-signs in Boston, 8 years, $9.5 million a year. He's going to get a lot of doggy bones for that dog of his. That is a very adorable dog that he has, got to say. But congratulations to him on that contract. Just another defenseman getting paid a lot of money. And that Dougie Hamilton contract for the Devils is just looking better and better and better and better and better by the day. Brady Tkachuk, as we talked about last week, finally re-signs in Ottawa, 7 years, $8.2 million a year. Very good deal for the Ottawa Senators here. It's really good to see Brady Tkachuk back on the ice. Ryan Pulock also re-signs with the New York Islanders, 8 years. It's believed to be around $6.5 million a year. TSN insider Darren Drager believes it's under $50 million total. If this is true, that's a fantastic deal that the New York Islanders just signed Ryan Pulock to. That's a very friendly deal, especially for a guy who defensively has been one of the better defensemen in the entire league, especially when you look at Corsi rating. But all really good deals down the line. Good re-signings by all teams here. Really good to lock up some very key players and key players to your franchise. Lastly, we got some waiver wire news. Leo Komarov was placed on waivers by New York Islanders. New York Islanders also placing Dmitry Timashov on unconditional waivers to terminate his contract. So pretty surprising and fall from grace for a kid that was drafted relatively high just a couple years ago. Morgan Barron has been called up by the New York Rangers, much to the delight of our buddy Tom. Gotta say, I know he's going to be grinning ear to ear about that, and something that we're going to be talking about in our segment on Friday for sure. Pierre-Olivier Joseph was sent down by the Pittsburgh Penguins as well. Kind of surprising in my mind because I felt like he had already kind of earned that spot, period. So it was surprising to me when I saw that he had gotten sent down. And then lastly, Ilya Kovalchuk, former player of the Los Angeles Kings, Montreal Canadiens, New Jersey Devils, and of course the Atlanta Thrashers. He was named general manager of Team Russia for the Winter Olympics this year. So congratulations to him on being named general manager of Team Russia. And just like that, we're done with our quick hits. We might dive into a couple of these news stories next week, but we needed to get through them quickly. But now it's time for our newest segment. We are going to be talking about those players of the weeks, and it's time to look at the high performance of the week.
Your I-80 Sports High Performance Players of the Week.
So we're talking about the players of the week here. Tom and I have chosen one or two players each to talk about for our players of the week because we had some high performers this week. Tom, who are some of your high performers of the week?
Well, I mean, obviously the best player in the world right now is having a great start to the season in Connor McDavid. He had that hat trick on Saturday night against Calgary in the Battle of Alberta. Live for that. Opening night, fans back in Edmonton. And, well, actually it wasn't opening night. It was the second home game for the Oilers. My apologies for that. But he looked really, really good Saturday night. Connor McDavid is on another level than the rest of the league. And I don't mean to toot his horn, man, but I love watching him play. I really do. I'm going to be another homer. I'm going to be a little bit of a homer with my next one. And that's someone who's near and dear to me between the pipes almost every night for my favorite team, the New York Rangers. Igor Shesterkin, kept them in the game against Dallas on Thursday night, was lights out in Montreal on Saturday night, and was lights out in Toronto last night. So I'm loving what I'm seeing from Igor. I really am. I feel like I undervalue Igor a little bit. I said he wasn't going to be an elite goalie. I said he wasn't going to be another Lundqvist. I don't think he's going to be another Lundqvist, but man, oh man, is he looking good so far.
Yeah. I got to say, both players look great this week. Connor McDavid, of course, looking fantastic as always. A hat trick over the weekend. The Battle of Alberta looked fantastic as well. Igor Shesterkin, even as a Devils fan, I got to say, looked very, very good in opening week as well. And fine, if Tom's going to be a homer here, I'm going to be a homer here. One of my players of the week this week is Jack Hughes. I mean, yes, it's only one game, but two very important goals in that game is huge. That overtime goal was a highlight reel goal that will be played throughout the season. Seriously, if you haven't seen that goal yet, it's been all over SportsCenter. Go and check out that goal. It is a beautiful goal by Jack Hughes, proving why he was drafted number 1 overall 2 years ago. This could be the start of a potentially very good season by Jack Hughes and the New Jersey Devils this year. We're just going to have to monitor and see as we go through the week. I have 2 other players that I'll point out real quick. Anze Kopitar of the Los Angeles Kings, 7 points in the opening week. He has been utterly fantastic. 4 goals, 3 assists. He has been on fire as of late. And lastly, the reason why the Buffalo Sabres are winning games, it's their goaltending tandem right now. Dustin Tokarski and Craig Anderson, both currently sporting a goals against below 1. They've been very, very good so far. They've been working as a team. And I always felt that Tokarski, if he was given the opportunity, could be a potentially good goaltender. And I think this could be the start of that in Buffalo, but we're just going to have to see how his performance holds up over the course of the entire season. This is certainly not a team built for success right now. But in our last segment, we're here to talk about the question of the day, as we always do to wrap up the show, which the question of the day this week is, and you can comment down below with your opinion, goes back to the thumbnail of this video and why you even clicked on this video. Does Evander Kane play in the NHL ever again? Tom, what do you think?
Definitely not. I don't think he'll ever play hockey again anywhere, unless maybe some crazy team in the KHL will ask for his services. But he won't be playing in the NHL again. I don't know if he'll ever be playing hockey again. Right now, he needs to worry about himself. He needs to get his own life on track. He needs to bring himself back to normal. He needs to start, acting like a normal human being again before he could ever think about playing hockey.
Yeah, he needs to focus on his life at the moment. He needs to focus on, sometimes there are things that are bigger than hockey. Sometimes there are things that are more important than the sport that you play. And in my opinion, I say no, simply because no team wants to deal with the headache, as I alluded to before. As talented as he is, nobody wants to take that chance. Then again, I've been wrong before, and I'll be wrong again. Maybe he finds a job next year. Who knows? There's no denying his talent. But that being said, if he doesn't play in the NHL, I think there's a very good likelihood he plays professionally, maybe in Europe, maybe in Russia. There are plenty of opportunities out there for a player of his caliber, even with the headaches that he brings with him. But guys, as always, we've come to the end of our show. So we ask you, what do you guys think? Given all the news and notes that we gave you guys this week, what are your opinions? Were we right on some things? Were we wrong on some things? We want to hear you guys down below in the comment section on YouTube. Make sure you drop a comment. And while you're there, drop us a like and subscribe for all the NHL content that we've got coming up. Like we said, we've got a surprise segment that we're bringing you guys on Friday. You're just going to have to stick around and see what that's about. Give you a little bit of hint. If you're a fan of the New Jersey Devils and if you're a fan of the New York Rangers, we could have quite a bit to talk about on Friday. So you're going to want to check us out. We might even go live in that video. We'll give you plenty of heads up if we decide to do so. But you got to be here to check it out. And you can also check out our content down below at i80sports.com, where besides our NHL content, we have a bunch of sports that are now in full swing. So you want to make sure that you check out our NFL, NCAA football, MLS, and NBA content as well. The NBA season just starting tonight, in fact. So definitely give our NBA content creators some love as well with the work that they've been doing. And drop some love to the NFL, NCAA football, and MLS team. They've been working tirelessly to bring you guys awesome content as well. We've been rolling along, and we're only going to keep rolling. We've hit the ground running. All seasons are now underway. It's just a good time to be a sports fan in general. And while you're on our website, make sure that you hit up our shop, get yourself a t-shirt as low as $8. You won't regret it. And if you follow us on Twitter, make sure that you follow us down below at i80_sportsNHL. Or rather, if you don't follow us already on Twitter, because I said if you follow us, that wouldn't make sense to follow us again. I wish you could. But if you don't currently follow us, make sure you follow us down below at i80_sportsNHL, where we tried our best to keep up with the news and notes that you guys should know as well. And if you're already currently following us, thank you guys so much. I can't English right now. Thank you guys so much, because we greatly value all of your support. Without you guys, we can't do this on a weekly basis. I'm going to go read a dictionary now. I think it's time that I go to bed. But guys, the regular season is in full swing. We're more than happy that we're bringing content to you guys. But as per usual, it's time to roll away. Have some fun with watching some hockey this week. I'm going to go find that dictionary now and maybe even a thesaurus. I'm Brian. He's been Tom. This has been yet another episode of NHL on I-80 Sports.